What is going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Mike Roach Podcast, where I dive into everything sports, culture, politics, and beyond. As you can see, I have a very special guest, an important guest with me, by the way, Clayton Campbell, the president of the Toronto Police Association. Clayton, thank you very much for taking the time to do this today.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So, Clayton, usually when I do these type of podcasts, right, it's very free flowing. I don't typically have a list of questions, but because of the seriousness of the podcast and the importance of it, I do have some stuff that I've written down that I'm going to ask you. But before I get into that, can you please tell me and tell the audience that's going to be watching and listening to this, the duties that you have as the president of the Toronto Police Association?
Yeah, thanks for that. It's really an honor, right? So I get to represent over 8,000 members of the Toronto Police Service. That includes police officers, our dispatchers, special constables, parking enforcement officers, administrative staff, even gets down to mechanics, IT people. So it's a real vast number of different skill sets that I get to represent. And so we're the association, but essentially the union. So we have some sole responsibilities, which is number one thing is negotiating the collective agreement for all these members. I also have the privilege to be the voice of over 8,000 people. Members of the Toronto Police Service aren't allowed to speak publicly on issues like this. They'd have to be very careful if they came on a podcast giving personal opinions or their positions, especially police officers. So I get that privilege to be the sole spokesperson for over 8,000 people. And I get to run the Toronto Police Association, which is a big agency, lots of responsibility, and a big voice and stage in policing issues in Canada.
And you've done a good job of it, by the way, since you've been there. I've been following you, and you've been pretty outspoken, which is really a good thing, because I think we need a little bit of more of that at the times that we're living in right now. Mm-hmm. Things have changed drastically, and sometimes you need to have somebody who speaks up drastically as well to kind of combat that, right? So as you say that, I'm looking at some of these numbers here, Clayton, okay? 45% increase in shootings, 62% increase in gun-related homicides. Gun violence is up in general overall 116%. Violent crime up 50% under the Liberal government, by the way, the last 9 years. Now, to your knowledge, why has the crime rate shot up like this over that time?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is, and I'll first say that from the association perspective and for our members, we really share the same wants and desires with the community. And that is, we want healthy and safe communities where people can go about their daily lives. They can go to a sporting event. They can take their kids to school. They can go to activities. They can go out to a restaurant and not have a fear of crime. And so we really share that same perspective. I think one of the biggest things is it's a small number of people repeatedly committing offenses. We've taken the position at the association. We believe in restorative justice. We believe in second chances and even third chances for individuals. People make mistakes, and our members believe in that too. And it's just really that small number of people committing atrocities in the streets of Toronto, if it's shootings or carjackings and home invasions. And we've really tried to lobby, you mentioned the Liberal government, but really tried to lobby just to really try to keep those repeat violent offenders in custody. To try and have stricter sentences for really violent individuals, not, minor crimes, but really those violent individuals. And we think we're aligned. We go to community meetings where city councilors talk to their constituents, and we hear the same thing. There's a real fear of crime in the city, and the numbers support that.
So why does it seem like the government is not taking this more seriously in regards to bail and not jail? I mean, it seems pretty basic here, Clayton.
Yeah.
What is the deal with that?
Yeah, it's frustrating for our members. I think we're really doing our part, right? We're going out there. Our members are dealing with dangerous situations, truly running towards danger when others run away, to make these arrests and try to arrest the bad guys that are out there. If it's shootings in the streets or carjackings. And so I've been at the association. I'm in my 7th year. We've continued to lobby in Ottawa. We're members of the Canadian Police Association, so we have a voice in Ottawa at the federal level. And we feel that although we've lobbied, we really haven't been listened to. And some of the laws and some of the changes have really made things more difficult for us. instead of making it easier. And we continue to push forward to say, just really keep those repeat violent offenders in custody. People that have given multiple chances, are continually charged with failing to comply with their conditions, should be held in custody. And that's important for our members, but really it's important for the citizens of Toronto to keep them safe.
But that just seems like a blatant disregard for the citizens of Toronto and beyond, because I mean, what is the morale like with police officers when you target certain individuals? You get them into custody in the morning, and then by lunchtime, they're at the counter to get lunch because they're out on bail already.
Mike, you're speaking my language. I'll tell you right now, it's that crazy frustration. It's the frustration around it, and our members just keep doing the best they can. We can't change the laws. We have to enforce them. It's part of my job is to advocate for that change. I think you're seeing a change in public sentiment around the fact that we need to have stricter bail laws. We need to keep those repeat violent offenders in custody. I think until there's a change in Ottawa, which is probably coming, we're not going to see that. And I feel good that I've had actual members of the Conservative Party. The Shadow Minister of Justice, as an example, Larry Brock, came out and spent some time with me and said, okay, we're talking about keeping repeat violent offenders in custody. What does that actually look like? How do we actually change the criminal code to do that? And so I'm happy to see that they're actually reaching out to associations, and I'm sure police services as well, to ask for how do we really make these changes. So I feel confident that we're going to see that on the horizon.
What do you think police officers at this point are a bit hesitant to go above and beyond because of the, potential for public backlash, or because they know if they catch them, they're just going to be right back on bail anyway?
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I think in general, our members just keep doing their job. They keep just arresting the same person over and over again. It's because they care. Most police officers, the vast majority, really want to just catch the bad guy, protect victims. It's a great feeling, right? When you can go there and protect somebody and help sort through a really challenging situation, and if an arrest is involved, and put that bad guy in jail. So they keep going out and doing it, but there's a lot of frustration around it, especially our specialized unit, our gang and gun unit, our intel drugs units, that they're dealing with those high kind of flyers, those real gang members, violent individuals out there. When you're seeing those shootings, to see them back out in the street, it's a true frustration. But I'm so proud our members just keep going out and doing their job. But we do need the support, especially from the federal level, to change some of the laws, to keep these bad guys in jail and to protect our members and the citizens.
Now, you speak about the federal level. Are they supporting you in regards to sufficient resources and personnel in regards to the police?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? I mean, we're a municipal police service, so we're funded by the City of Toronto. I'm sure if you asked any city councillor in the City of Toronto, and we speak to all of them, that they're going to say Toronto's unique, right? Toronto is not like, I grew up in a small town in Northern Ontario, right? So we didn't have the Raptors or the Leafs or Taylor Swift or Caravana or Pride or any of these major events, FIFA that's coming in a few years. Yep. So I think there is a responsibility on the federal government and provincial government to assist the city in these policing events, right? They're not just a Toronto event. They're Canada-wide events. And I'm sure, like I said, you speak to the mayor or anybody at city council is going to say, we want the federal government or provincial government to step up and provide some policing resources to these events. And I support that.
I mentioned to you before that, the increase, right, in the shootings and the gun-related homicides and stuff like that. 85% of the guns coming into the country, coming through the border. What are you supposed to do about that?
Yeah, it's tough, right? And it's funny now where with Trump being elected, it started to become more of a topical issue, the border. But it's something I've talked about in my entire time at the association and prior. When we had a previous president and I was a director, where there's clearly a problem at the border, right? When we have 85% of the firearms that are used in crimes and seized by our members in the City of Toronto, there were 700 seized last year. 85 are sourced to the U.S. That doesn't mean the other 15% aren't from the U.S., right? If you have serial numbers that are scratched out, or it's challenging to track that down, but there's clearly a problem at the border. And so it's funny when you're hearing Trump talk about the issues with Canada and preventing things going into the US.
It is a major problem.
We got a major problem. We've got a major problem. We're seeing those firearms brought into the city of Toronto and causing havoc on our streets. And there needs to be more resources directed to the border for sure.
Like, is there any other new technology or methods that are being adapted right now? Or
Yeah, I mean, there's always new technologies, absolutely. But I think a lot of it comes down to boots on the ground, right? We need people down there doing those investigations. We just had a huge seizure. It was a joint operation where $85 million worth of cocaine.
I saw that.
It was huge, right? I think it was the biggest in Toronto. And so that was tracked from Mexico through the US and into Canada. So, I mean, you need boots on the ground investigations going on. A lot of the things you see with those type of investigations are covert, right? We're not seeing them in the news. That's a big one. So we're hearing about it, but there's a lot that are happening every day by those units. So I think you need staffing and resources down at the border and technology as well.
Do you want to hear more of it in the news, sir?
I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, it gives me something to talk about, and I think it's important. I think, what I like to do is go to those community events, listen to the real citizens, especially when city councilors are meeting with their constituents. And I can tell you, public safety and the fear of things going on in this city are at top of mind for every single citizen that comes up. If it's 911 response times, if it's waiting for a police officer to get to their home and help them, all those sorts of things are always top of mind. So yeah, it's sad to see it in the city. We want a safe city, but I think it's important to continue to talk about it so we can get changes made that we need to keep our members safe, my members safe, and the citizens overall.
Now, we see the rise in the crime, and we see that the offender is getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
What do you think the root cause of that is, right? It's kind of a difficult subject because we talk about bail, we talk about jail, not bail, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about mental health and what the police officers are supposed to do and having social workers and this and all that. But at the same time, when you talk about having social workers and counselors and all that kind of stuff, it's not really the job of the police.
No, I agree with you. And I kind of phrase it this way. When the police get involved, a lot of the time that's because everything else in society has failed. And I don't pretend to be an expert in it, but if it's a lack of employment opportunities, if it's lack of proper education or healthcare, all those sorts of things, a lot of the time the police get involved when everybody else failed. Yeah. We completely support that there needs to be proper funding into all those other resources too. We're not saying, hey, it's the police can solve all the world's problems. We can't. We're kind of the last resort when things aren't going well. So we support funding to all those other agencies too that are struggling. I'd love to see a day when we could have less police officers, right? When there was less crime. But right now we need that enforcement aspect of it to get things under control in the city.
Is there any current issues in regards to the public perception of the police right now?
I think that's always a battle, right? I think there's always a battle. I think one of the biggest things with public perception is we are reflective of the communities we serve. The service is really, I've been on 25 years, and I can tell you when I started as a young police officer in 31 Division, which is up at Jane and Finch, I loved it there. Met my wife there too. Actually, we're on the same shift. But the diversity you're seeing in our service is amazing. And anybody that kind of challenges that, I say, do you know what? Go for a ride along, go to your local division, meet the men and women that are out there. We're diverse in every aspect. And so I think that kind of stigma of, it's just that old white cop with a mustache from the 70s is not reflective of actually what's going on in the service. And that, we make mistakes. We're not perfect, but the vast majority of our members really do their best in difficult situations and want to serve and want to make a difference in their communities.
Now, Canadians are struggling in many different ways, socially, economically, especially as well. Are you seeing any correlation between the rise of crime and drug addiction or mental health or anything like that?
It's one of those where I'm sure it's in relation to mental health. We track how many calls. We deal with tens of thousands a year, but they really don't. I would imagine if you really dug down into it, drug addiction and mental health are probably the vast majority of the calls we deal with. Clearly, with economical issues going on, that has an impact on mental health, might drive people to addiction issues. So yeah, it's a huge problem in society. Our members do a very good job with de-escalation and trying to deal with these issues. We're certainly not healthcare experts. And if we didn't have to ever respond to a call for someone in crisis, our members would be supportive of it. But when we have people that are either armed, a harm to themselves or others, or involved in violence, we're really the only resort to go out and do the best we can. And overall, our members do a really good job in trying to de-escalate those situations and bring them to a safe conclusion for everybody.
Now, overall, Clayton, I'm on X and I'm on Instagram and all these things, and every other day we're seeing a jewelry store getting their doors kicked in. We're seeing cars slamming into police officers with people out. 75 convictions.
Yeah.
75 convictions. Are you kidding me? People are getting their doors kicked open. Now, the city of Toronto, it's not just the most popular city in Canada. The city of Toronto is one of the most popular cities in the world.
Yeah.
In the world. Why do you believe we have not heard more from Justin Trudeau about this? If you are the prime minister of a country, why the hell would you not talk more and be more brazen in regards to standing up to criminals in one of the most important cities in the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's mind-boggling. Like I mentioned before, we go to Ottawa. I've been there for the past 7 years at the association where we lobby for bail reform, and we're seeing some of the laws that are brought back in that really make it easier to release criminals. And as I mentioned before, we're not talking about minor crime or something like that. We're talking about really bad guys involved in, as you mentioned, those carjackings, shootings, those type of things. I don't know why. I really, it's a struggle with me. Maybe he's disconnected in Ottawa. Maybe he needs to come to Toronto and actually meet with citizens face to face and see the fear that's out there, and make the change. But I've pretty much lost hope. We know there's going to be a change in Ottawa, and we're hopeful that they're going to bring in some stricter bail laws, changes to the criminal code to really protect the citizens. But it's scary, right? When you're seeing those carjackings, the jewelry stores are wild. The carjacking and the smash up with the Hummer, 75 criminal convictions. And
that's outrageous.
Yeah. Like, I can see 1 or 2 chances, 75 chances that's enough. That person needs to be in custody. If they're released from custody, does anybody really think they're not going to be back out in the street doing the same thing again, stealing another car and putting everybody's life in danger? And with that case, luckily, our officers did a great job of boxing that Hummer in. I'm sure you saw the video. It's crazy. If he would have got out of that box and out into the streets of Toronto, we would have definitely a huge chance of having a seriously injured or dead citizen. And so thank God our officers did a really good job of containing him. But it's something that's frustrating, and I don't think we're going to get any change until there's a change in Ottawa.
Now that you mentioned that, good segue here, okay? I'm going to finish it off with this as for the last question here. It looks like, from what I'm seeing here and from what everybody is seeing, it looks like there's going to be a change in Ottawa. Yeah. All right? Now, with that said, Pierre Poilievre looks like he is going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. Mm-hmm. Okay? What would your message be to him if and when, I'll say when he becomes the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I mean, I think a few things. Bail reform, which we've talked about. We need to protect our cities here and keeping bad guys that are involved in violent offenses in custody. That is an absolute priority. I'd also say, we talked about it as well earlier, around proper funding to our cities. We are a world-class city. The events we deal with here in the city of Toronto are not just a Toronto issue. They are Ontario or Canada-wide issues. So we want to make sure, keep some of the funding coming here for public safety into the city of Toronto. I think those are the two big issues for a future prime minister. And like I said, I've had the opportunity to meet with some of his shadow ministers, and I've communicated that exact message to them. that's a priority for us.
Clayton, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to do this. Thank you to all the officers who have to sacrifice for all of us citizens in Toronto and beyond. We really appreciate it. We know it's a super tough job. It's a thankless job too, by the way.
Yeah.
But honestly, I want to say thank you very much. I
Thank
really
you,
do appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.